Next, Claire Green. And Joseph O'Connell.
Present.
Thank you. Now Olson.
Here.
Luis Pasikoff. Kate Shaw will be joining us a little bit late. Are any members of the Committee on Administration and Management who did not hear their name called at this time?
Sorry, Amy Bunk. I joined a little late.
No problem, thank you. Next, we'll move to our wonderful project consultant, Joshua Blank.
Present.
Thank you. And Lee Osofsky.
Present.
Thank you very much. At this time, are there any ACUS members on the line whose name I did not call?
Hi, this is Claire Green. I'm not sure if you called my name, but I was a few minutes late. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you for joining us.
Sure, thank you.
Are there any other ACUS members on the line whose name I did not call or did not hear their name? We'll turn it over to our acting chair, vice chair, and executive director, Matthew Weiner, for any opening comments.
I don't have any such comments, so I'll turn it back over either to you or Aaron to get started with the meeting.
All right, well, I think I will go through the ground rules again. They'll be the same as last time, though this time, hopefully we will get a vote at the end of the meeting. So here are the rules. Please note that only ACUS members, including government members, public members, senior fellows, liaison representatives, and special counsels, whether or not on the committee and their designated alternates, have full speaking privileges. To avoid background noise, I ask that you keep your microphones on mute and either use Zoom's hand raise feature or add a comment. In fact, just do add a comment rather than hand raise feature in the chat if you'd like to speak. I'll then call on you and you can unmute yourself. I also ask the ACUS members and their alternates use the webcam to facilitate conversation. If possible, I recognize that isn't always possible, but to the extent you can. With respect to attendees other than ACUS members and alternatives, participation requires the unanimous consent of the committee members. Time permitting, I'll consider calling on such attendees at an appropriate point and will presume that committee members consent absent their raising an objection. If any such participant would like to speak, please so indicate in the chat feature and wait for me to call on you. For all participants, please use the chat feature only to indicate that you'd like to speak. Please do not hold any sidebar conversations or substantive comments in the chat feature. And at the end, only members of the committee will have a vote. Please do not vote unless you're a member of the committee. We have a list of committee members in case you are unsure. Those are the ground rules. Any questions before we get started? All right. Want to bring it up for us here, Alexandra? Great. And just a recap where we were last time, if you were here and have forgotten or you weren't here for the first meeting, we made it through all of the then drafted recommendations. We'll still have a chance to look at them again, but we didn't go through the preamble, and we had a discussion with some homework for Nina and Eloise about adding some stuff in the very first kind of suite of recommendations. So what we'll do is we will go to the first suite of recommendations. Then we'll briefly go through the ones that we've already looked at before to make sure we're all still on board. Then we will go through the preamble. But this first new suite, this is the new stuff that comes from kind of a mixture of Nina and Eloise and with what we already had. So with that, let's start with the new recommendation 1. I'll give everybody a little chance to read it and then we'll discuss. All right, would anybody like to be heard on new recommendation 1? thanks also to, like I said, to Nina and Eloise for helping. All right. Hearing none in the chat, we will go to recommendation 2. Again, I'll give you a chance to read it, think about it, and then if you'd like to be heard, to chime in the chat. All right. Would anybody like to be heard on new recommendation 2? All right, hearing none, we'll go to recommendation 3. Good job, Eloise and Nina. Would anybody like to heard on recommendation 3? All right, hearing none, we'll go to recommendation 4. All right, and Joseph O'Connell would like to be heard on 4. Anne, the floor is yours.
I'm not sure if I can do a nitpicky suggestion, but I would
Sure.
just delete in order in the last sentence. So these procedures should incorporate periodic user testing to ensure accessibility and effectiveness.
And I think that Microsoft agrees with you on that one. Does anybody disagree with that? Any objections to that? All right, would anybody else like to be heard on 4?
This is Claire Green. I don't know if this should be in 4 or somewhere else, but I'm wondering if we should add in something about, you talk about periodic user testing in order to ensure accessibility and effectiveness, but the research and evaluation as well.
What this is my ignorance. What does that mean?
Well, so that there is ongoing research to determine that whatever has been implemented is being used properly, is effective, is, it's just that ongoing evaluation to ensure that the tools are working as intended.
So would you say something like these procedures should include periodic user testing and ongoing assessment to ensure accessibility and effectiveness? Would that do the trick, or is it something beyond that?
I think maybe ongoing research and evaluation.
Sure. Yeah, ongoing research and evaluation. Let's see what that looks like. All right, is that language getting anybody any heartburn?
Aaron, just from a drafting perspective, I mean, evaluation strikes me as fine. Research, I guess I'm not really sure what type of research exactly that would entail. I don't know, Claire, do you have any thoughts on that?
So, well, I'm coming at this from sort of the SSA's perspective of trying to design more online tools. And the idea is to research what people need, whether what they're getting is working correctly, and sort of how to move forward with that. It might fit a little better in number 5, because you've got GSA doing an evaluation. So I'm happy to take this sort of concept of ongoing research and evaluation of this to the 5th recommendation. Um, but I also think it works. It could work in foreign.
All right, I see Nina said something in the chat. Though we can do focus groups on
I
how
just-
users understand and respond to the tools. What misunderstandings they have. You can explore different types of tools. I know Nina has limited accessibility. She's on the train. Can you be heard, Nina, to explain
So I
or?
think,
Sure,
yeah, can you hear me?
I
think
can hear
in
you.
addition, okay, in addition to user testing, you can actually set up all sorts of research studies to figure out what types of messages work with what types of automated systems and where you might not want to use it because there's just too much capacity for confusion. I don't know that that's what folks are thinking about research and evaluation, but if I were running such a thing, that's what I would do on an ongoing basis.
Yes, actually, you've said it well. It is that sort of ongoing understanding and and also, I mean, considering the demographics, is it work with one group and not another group? And so I think it's the whole idea of the online tools are ripe for all kinds of research.
So I guess my question, and I'm not wedded to this, is, what does research add that evaluation doesn't have? I mean, isn't it implicit in evaluation that there's going to be a range of research types?
I guess when I'm thinking research, I'm thinking more of the focused researchers at the different agencies, whereas you could be evaluating it, management can be evaluating it, and the communications folks can be evaluating it, and it's not quite, doesn't have the gravitas that the research community might put into it.
Okay, I mean, I don't have a problem with this language. I do hear Reeves' concern, which is folks might not understand what we mean, but I think most people will. Would anybody else like to be heard on this one? I mean, if we were all in the same room, I would look around the table and say, do we feel good about research or not feel good about research? I can't read the room right now. So I'm going to say we feel good about research. If we don't feel good about research, somebody please say something. All right, Lee.
Hey, well, it sounds to me like Claire, by research, Claire is meaning to indicate sort of who's going to be doing it. So as a potential idea, what about these procedures should incorporate periodic user testing and other forms of evaluation by the, something about by internal agency researchers or something like that to ensure accessibility and effectiveness.
Yeah, I'd probably say internal and external for internal and external research.
So internal, okay. Is that a helpful edit, Claire, from your perspective? Claire, let me say that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I think so. It gets the message across that there should be, they shouldn't just, put in the tool and never look at it again kind of thing, and not look at it from different angles.
All right, Nina would like to be heard. The floor is yours, Nina.
Okay, I just wanted to reiterate what Claire had said about research is different from evaluation. I think that evaluation, you could have an analyst on the staff saying, we got these many people using this tool, and so therefore it's a success. And you would never do the further research into why this group is using it and this group is not using it. And so I like the fact that you've got internal and external researchers in that work, in that phrase. I think research is a really key word. However, whatever part of the word you're using, research has to be in this proposal to distinguish it or clarify what kind of evaluation we're talking about.
So are you okay with this proposed language on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, would anybody else like to be heard on the proposed language on the screen? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. That was helpful. Let's look at number 5. Do we have a representative from GSA either on or who has seen this? This might be a question to Alex or Reeve.
Alexandra, could you speak to that? We did indeed reach out. Could you speak to what?
Yes, we
response, if
reached
any?
out to the member at GSA. We didn't hear anything back specifically.
Okay, well, we gave him a chance. All right, would anybody like to be heard on number 5? All right, hearing none. So we can do this a couple of ways. We've now covered all of the recommendations. I don't think we have any outstanding comments on any of them either, though tell me if I'm misremembering. Am I misremembering?
You know what, Aaron, there was one issue that was tabled for this meeting in particular, which was that language regarding agencies should consider. And I'm going to scroll down
Okay.
to those recommendations. Here's one in 19.
Okay.
The other one might have been overcome by events.
Okay. Let's look at number 19 then. I'll give everybody a chance to read it and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so was the concern, what exactly was the concern? I'm trying to remember.
The language should be specifically should consider, or it should be something more firm.
Okay, all right. Robert wants to be heard on 13 and 15. We will, after we finish this, Robert, we'll go to 13 and 15. Let's do 19 right now. Would anybody like to be heard on 19 on the language of should consider, as opposed to say determine or something like that? Okay, I'm going to do the same that we did before, which is I'm going to assume that the language on the screen is the view of the committee. If that's not the view of the committee or not your view, now would be a good time to speak up. All right, Bill Funk.
Minor issue. I think it should be whether or under what circumstances. Because the decision may be, we don't ever let it, we don't allow it. Or we allow it, but when do we allow it? So it seems to me whether or, that's all.
Okay. Does anybody disagree with, I mean, I think that is consistent with how it is currently framed. It's just a better articulation of it. I don't think that's a substantive change. But are we okay substantively with the language in 19? Is there anybody not okay substantively with the language in 19?
This is Claire again. I guess
Sure.
I wonder if there should be something about a disclaimer for people that are using the tool and may be relying on it. So agencies, consider how much it can be relied on, but they somehow need to communicate that to the tool users.
Isn't that number 20? I think, Claire, that they announced the fact.
I thought 20 was getting at that, but make sure that it does. So Claire, can you please review 20 and see if that gets your concern?
Um, Yeah, I think so. I guess I would, no, I think it does. I think it does.
All right, Josh has a comment. Josh.
Thanks. And I just, to pick up on this question that Claire raised on 20, maybe one possibility could be to add after in a subsequent investigative or adjudicative proceeding, something like including in the application of penalties for non-compliance. So if an agency takes the position that it can depart from an interpretation or explanation provided by an automated legal guidance tool in a subsequent investigative or adjudicative proceeding, including in the application of penalties for non-compliance, it should prominently announce that fact to users. It might just make it explicit that the agency should tell people that you're not going to be able to rely on this necessarily for penalty relief.
Claire, does that work for you?
I think that's really good. I was sort of thinking about it, yeah, getting it in the application, and I think he's done that nicely.
Does anybody want to be heard on 19 or 20? Okay, then let's go back and look at 13 and then 15. All right, Rob Gerard, can you take the floor?
Sure. And I apologize if this was addressed in the last meeting. I had to end early. I was wondering, first of all, on 13, agencies should also maintain a publicly accessible archive. I think to be more consistent with the report, which had some good ideas here, I'd like to suggest agencies should also maintain a publicly accessible, searchable archive.
I like that. Does anybody not like that? I guess I don't know enough about computers to know how much of a burden we are putting on them. It doesn't seem like that's much more. If you're going to have an archive, a searchable archive doesn't seem that much more, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Anybody who knows more about it want to speak up here? Is that a second? Do you have a second comment, Josh? All right, Josh, and then Bill.
I like this because one potential problem, which I know other organizations have had when they've tried to comply with archive requirements and other types of access requirements, is if they just maintain in a box somewhere printed pages every time they made changes, and somebody can come get it if they know the box exists and then spend hours looking through it, that wouldn't be very useful. And I think that the idea that Lee and I talked about in the report and the point of this recommendation was to make it clear that agencies should maintain an online, publicly accessible, searchable archive. I wonder if we might want to add some language to make this, I know this is an obvious point, but and a bunch of paper sitting in an office wouldn't be the type of thing we're talking about, yet the language doesn't exactly say that explicitly. Searchable helps, but Robert's comment made me think of the fact that we didn't actually say an electronic or an online version of this archive.
So would you say agencies should also maintain an online, publicly accessible, searchable archive?
To me, that works well, but I'm thinking in the year 2022 and 2032, I don't know if online will not have a lot of meaning. And I don't know if we've used online that much elsewhere. I wonder if, or maybe computer searchable. I'm not sure. It's the point that you're suggesting is exactly what I'm talking about. I just don't know if the right word is online or electronic or maybe computer searchable, but something that makes it clear we're not talking about printed paper.
Reeve, could I ask you to chime in on this one? I think we use online a fair bit, but maybe I'm wrong. I think everything will have to be updated in 10 years. But
yeah, I mean, I couldn't speak, definitively, but I think we've used online. I think we've used electronic. I think either would be in accord with past usage, or whichever the committee prefers. I don't think it's going to be a departure from past usage.
Or Nina suggests digital, but with a question mark. I'm going to, unless anyone feels strongly, I'm going to defer to Josh. Josh likes electronic, so are we okay with electronic? Okay. All right. Substantively, I think Bill is next. Bill.
I have a question, which is, why should there be a electronic, publicly accessible, searchable archive of what used to be electronic legal guidance? I mean, obviously you want what's currently the guidance to be publicly accessible and searchable and so forth, but an archive of what, 5 years ago you said it was, but before the law changed, and so you made a change to the guidance because the law changed. I mean, I worry about too much information, just like too many choices at the grocery store make it harder to choose. I'm trying to figure out what the benefit is to the public to have this archive of what used to be the guidance.
Nina. Nina, the floor is yours.
Here we go. Sorry about that. I can give you an example from the IRS this past 2 years with the economic impact payments. The IRS put out FAQs, which were sort of automated legal guide. They're applicable to everyone. And they basically, on the exact same legislative language, reversed their position on a paper, on an issue from what they took the position in 2008. And being able to retrieve what they said in 2008 was very helpful in saying, well, why did you reverse this position? You've got to explain this. And I think that the same kind of thing can apply to tools, which are even more of a black box thing, that at least researchers and those who are interested in these issues can go back and see if the position has changed, but it's not been made clear why it has.
I'm going to speak now as a member, so I'm taking off my chair hat. I think that this is actually really important, Bill. I mean, some of it is just, it feels a little bit 1984-ish to me, to have things just changing without people knowing that things are changing, and you never know what was the law at the time. I think that's just helpful. I know I often find myself using the Wayback Machine to try to find things as they used to be. And that's always feels a little bit unsettling because it's not always there. You just don't know what's happening. But beyond that, we've also done at least one of these recommendations on how to provide access to no longer operative guidance. And it feels that we should at least be consistent with ourselves. So I'm inclined to keep that. But again, I'm speaking now as a member, not as a chair. I'm curious what other people have to say. Josh, the floor is yours.
So just to echo one comment that we made in the report, there's also a reason why users might need to see past guidance for purposes of defending against penalties. Again, to get to a tax example, if somebody had looked at the guidance regarding economic impact payments that Nina just mentioned in 1 month in the year 2020 and relied on it, and then later had a problem and wanted to go back, a problem meaning an audit with the IRS and a controversy, and wanted to go back and say, but wait, your website said this. Currently, there's no way to go look at the old statements unless you use the Wayback Machine or have some way to do this. And so there's also a reason to create this archive so that users are able to easily find past statements if it applies to them. And this, especially using tax as an example, would come up if somebody wanted to make what's called the reasonable cause good faith defense that's provided by the statute, and wanted to use reliance on something that was through an automated tool. Currently, it's almost impossible unless you have the foresight to take screenshots of everything and then also date stamp them and keep track in case you ever got audited. But a searchable archive would let people or their advisors go back and find the statement that they relied on at the time they made their decision.
Bill, would you like to be heard in response?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, one, the fact that if you rely on it, you ought to be making a record of it. If you want to rely on something in the future, you ought to make a record of what it is you're relying on at the time that you're doing it. And we do provide that, you know, people should be able to get a copy of whatever it is, the advice that they got at the time that they got it. So the idea of, you know, to somebody who didn't get the advice, who didn't go online, who didn't get the advice at all, but now their lawyer wants to find some way around to justify what the person did. And so they need to go back and search and see if the agency ever said anything that might support what this person did, even though the person never actually used it. I mean, if somebody's going to rely on something, they ought to make a copy of what it is they're relying on. And not, if they didn't, then the idea of saying, well, it's searchable, you know. I understand that lawyers and that researchers might want to have this for various reasons, but it seems to me somehow you can do that without having this sort of be part of the general public's. Everybody gets to use this, and it's somewhere on the website, and so that's what I think of being as too much information for the general public. But I think I'm a minority here on this topic, so I'll just make my rant and let it go.
All right, would anybody like to be heard on Bill's side of this? I think you are the minority on this one, Bill. All right, let's go back to, I think, are we okay with 13? I'm gonna go back to where we started that, Robert. Gerard, are you okay with 13 as it is on the screen?
I actually had one more on
Sure.
13.
Yes.
I'd like to put in some text to implement a recommendation that the consultants made on page 37 of their report. I'd like to add a sentence at the end that says agencies should ensure that automated legal guidance includes its effective date or the date when it was last updated.
Lee or Josh, would you like to be heard on that?
Sure. This is consistent with the point that Lee and I made in the report. If we think about the example of somebody wanting that record when they can show this was the statement that was provided to me on this date. Again, currently it's very difficult for somebody to have the foresight to necessarily do that. But by including the dates in this archive, it would actually, I think, be better for everybody, both the government and the user, if there was a controversy or an issue. I realize that the way that we have the archive set up right now in this recommendation, it's not clear that there will be any dates, and so that might be way too much information for the public if you can't even figure out what date these different statements were on the website. Dates would make it much more organized.
Yeah, and I think that another point that we made in the report was just that this would be consistent with other forms of guidance that agencies provide, like regulations and other even informal guidance, like revenue procedures and the like, typically have effective dates.
Is this a new comment, Bill?
I have a question here, which is that I understand that if it's something that sort of this a frequently asked question, you know, and you could put a date at the end of whatever the answer was that when you put that answer up. Isn't there some sort of like iterative situation where the answer is responsive to something that somebody's put in? And so it would seem to be, I mean, would you just have to have it automatically do today's date, the date of that this is answering it. I'm worried about the idea of an iterative answer as opposed to a sort of black box answer that's always the same until you change it.
You know, I'd like to address that actually. What I was thinking about in terms of the consultant's recommendation was those agencies that use a decision tree and they have standardized answers. And I wasn't really thinking specifically of the archives, but the answers themselves having either the effective date or the date when it was last updated.
Lee or Josh?
I mean, one quick response to both comments is that I think that the language that was just on the screen a minute ago involving effective dates is immediately, maybe if we could just scroll up, I can't remember which number it was. I mean, the previous sentence, 2 sentences, talk about updates that the agency are making. So if the agency makes updates, then it's supposed to maintain this archive that identifies such updates, and agencies should ensure that such archives include dates and timestamps. Maybe we should, I mean, this isn't my role, so I'll just say it. Maybe the recommendation could refer to dates and timestamps for the updates or for such updates, because information provided, I think it's combining 2 concepts, which is creating the confusion, but it's the updates themselves that you would want to have timestamps on and dates. So dates and timestamps for such updates. I don't even know if you need the word provided since it's referring to updates in the previous sentence.
I'm going to put myself in the queue on this one. I think I'm not in favor of putting dates on current things. I think just my ordinary experience with computers and other websites, I assume that what I'm getting is current. And having dates, I think, creates some confusion. If we have the archive, I could go back and find the dates. I think it'd be unnecessary to have, if I'm like, going back and forth with a bot and it's giving me the date that it became effective. I don't think that would be helpful to me. That's, again, me as a member of the committee, not as a chair. So I'm inclined so I guess I'll say I like Josh's proposed language better than Robert's proposed language. But maybe I'm wrong, Robert. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of if, if an agency uses a decision tree with standardized answers to branching questions, even in real time, it could be helpful for a practitioner to know last updated and then have the date, so that they can know the currency of the information that they're looking at. There may be case law or subsequent developments after the last updating, which would affect their risk analysis for whether to rely on the guidance. But I'm not insistent on it. I think that if other members of the committee would find that to be too onerous for agencies or not add so much value, I'd be fine with just sticking with the archival records. I think that maybe the term date and timestamp for the archives is not quite accurate. This isn't like recommendation 18 where we're talking about giving the person a timestamp on their output for their personal records. We're just talking about including the date of the update, right?
Yes. And that is also consistent with the language that Nina says. That's how the IRS does it. They give the revision date in parentheses in instructions to staff. All right, Bill.
I tend to agree with Robert on this, that when I see something online like answers to questions. I do not assume that it is current. I assume that most entities, bureaucracies, don't keep up to date with everything the way they should. So to know that this was a week old, a year old, 5 years old would be actually, I think, as Robert said, would give you guidance about how much reliance you might put on this thing. So I think having that date on when it was last updated is valuable to somebody who looks at it.
Okay, so it looks like we have a divide. Would somebody else like to speak on this one?
And of course, this isn't in lieu of what we already have with respect to the archive. I mean, this is in addition to the archive.
Yeah, so what would it look like? I mean, I guess Robert or Bill, what would be language that would accomplish what you're saying?
Maybe something like agencies should ensure that standard answers list the date when they were updated.
I think we want to keep both thoughts, right?
Yes, and then I'd put a comma and say something about the archives. And that archival records indicate the date of revision.
Okay.
Okay, if you're going to use revision dates for standardized answers, it's not what I said, but that's fine. You could then roll in the archival stuff as well. Agencies should ensure that standardized answers and archival records include revision dates. Well, no, not archival answers. We're talking about archival records more generally.
Yeah.
Include revision dates, period.
All right, Anne, the floor is yours.
I'm sympathetic toward the dates. I'm not sure of the phrasing, but when I look at materials online from agencies, you often see in italics on the document, sort of last revision date. I'm not sure how it plays with the archives. Our agency is going to have to go back, or I'm thinking, it's like a simple way of saying in the recommendation that the effective dates of certain wording be listed. I'm not quite sure what the wording should be, but I am sympathetic toward having a date, and maybe agencies already do it.
How's that, Anne?
I mean, I don't know, like agencies should ensure that effective dates are provided for versions of for past versions of automated legal guidance. I don't know. Just the archival records part is messing with me a bit.
This is Warren Belmar with a suggestion. Could we say adding as of when it's published so that there is a date? And that would tell people that it was as of that date. This was the guidance.
Yeah, this is, if I can jump in, Aaron,
Yes,
and again,
please do.
I like that. I mean, that's what you see on outside of automated legal guidance. If you're looking at agency materials, they often have a, as of or revised as of date at the bottom in italics.
Okay, so Warren or Anne, can you please tell us what the language should say on the screen? I know that's not fair, but can you try? Anne, can I ask you to please try? And feel free to
How
tag
about
team Warren.
something like agencies should ensure that effective dates are provided for all versions of automated legal guidance tools. Respective effective dates.
Aaron, it's Anne. I'm not sure about effective dates as the right phrase, but this gets closer.
Promulgation, publication.
You know, we previously said
ensure that-
revision dates.
Yeah.
Which is also a term of art. That's what they use at the IRS is revision dates.
I like that. I like revision better than effective.
Well, we want to also have it cover the initial date as opposed to a revision date.
The revision date is actually showing when whatever the guidance is went into effect. But it tells you not only that, but when the IRS revised it. So then you can go back to the archive, or any agency, you can go back to the archive to see, well, what word changed? You know, what was added? That's just my thought on that, how I would use it.
I mean, I again, now I'm speaking as me, not as running the meeting. I think revision dates works. I understand your point that's, I guess that in theory leaves a gap. I don't think in the real world it would. I think people would just put a date on things. And then if it was revised, then they would say revised. But I don't know a better way to phrase it. Respective revision dates. I mean, issuance and revision dates, but then it's gonna be 2 dates, and that's not what we're trying to convey either. I mean, operative dates. Does that work, Robert, for you?
That would work, or maybe even version dates.
So this is, I want to finish this today, so I don't want to postpone it to another meeting. I am curious, Reeve, what we've done with this problem in other recommendations. I don't think we're the first group that have come across this. Well, maybe we are, but it feels like we're recreating the wheel a little bit here. Is that something that you can check real fast?
Let me check on it. Yeah, I think probably the inoperative guidance recommendation is going to come the closest. So let me take a look at that if you want to bracket it. The other alternative is, you know, we can do sort of a committee on style review after the fact. But yeah, let me see if I can find it now. If not, we can clean it up later.
All right, thanks. So let's put a bracket on that word, and then, but I think we're all okay content-wise. We just want to get the right word for it. Correct me if I'm wrong. If anybody is not okay content-wise, now would be a good time to speak up. Okay, Robert, are you done with 13, or if not, we can go on to 15.
I'm done with 13.
Are you done with 13? All right, let's go to 15. All right, thank you. Robert, the floor is yours.
Oh yeah, sure. And I really had a question for the committee, since I wasn't here for the whole meeting last time. 15 addresses that when they're using AI for their automated guidance tools, it says agencies should consider publishing information related to how the machine learning process was developed. The consultants in their report also dealt with those agencies that don't use AI, that use decision trees, and they'd recommended that when an automated guidance tool utilizes branching questions with standardized answers, it should post the entire decision tree to its website for reference. I was wondering if that was discussed and if a decision was made not to include that recommendation.
Either the
It's
consultants.
recommendation 14. The one right above.
Okay, we're looking at recommendation 14.
Okay, I think that actually covers my question.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so here's what I propose. Let's take a break, but I want this to be a little bit, to the extent we can, a little bit of a working break, such that, look over what was sent and the recommendations we haven't looked at yet. And if you would like to speak on one of the recommendations we've looked at before we get to the preamble, please do. So let's take 10 minutes. Let's come back, and during that time, if there were a recommendation you would like to bring to our attention, read over it and we'll talk about it when we get back. If not, we'll get to the preamble. So let's take 10 minutes. Okay, and I'll bring back the thing. Let's go back and look at 13. I'm chatting with Reeve. So the question here is what word to use for version dates. The concern being that we could say revision dates, but that doesn't work for first drafts. In other words, the first time they do it, it's not a revision. We could say issuance dates, but then that doesn't work for when we revise, and we don't want both because that's just too many dates. That'll just cause confusion. So I asked Reeve what we've kind of done in the past, and Reeve, is fast. And what do you got, Reeve?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So I took a quick look. I think, as I sort of suspect, probably the most relevant recommendation is inoperative guidance documents, and there we use inoperative, or I guess here operative would be sort of the best language to match what we did there. So if people are comfortable with that, I think that would be sort of the closest to our prior usage.
Are people comfortable with operative? All right, hearing no objection, we will go with operative. All right, so folks, I asked if you had a chance to look at them, if there are any that we haven't already talked about today that you would like to speak up. The floor is yours. Is there any of the other recommendations that people want to add proposed language or take away language? All right. All right, going. All right, there we go. We got a few. All right, Lee and then Josh. Lee.
Hi, yeah, I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, that on 14 and 15, there was some sort of discussion or debate about whether we should keep the word consider or whether it should just be agencies should publish.
Okay.
I think that Josh and I would lean towards should publish. Obviously, it's the committee's decision, but I thought there was some conversation about it last time and thinking about it again today.
Would a member of the committee like to be heard on this one? I mean, I'll speak as a member of the committee. My thought is we have this debate every time, the should consider versus the should. And it's strange because obviously everything we're doing is a recommendation. So in a sense, there's an asterisk on everything, should consider everything we say. So the question is, do we want to double should consider or just have the one the meta should consider? I am fine with should. I like shoulds. But I'm also sensitive that we have government members who might like the double hedge. So here's your chance. If folks like to keep the should consider rather than the should, now would be a good time. Otherwise, I propose we go to should and we take out the consider, and then we'll get a chance to vote. But I don't want to be a bully here, so I'll make sure if people want the consider, we'll keep the consider. So can you delete the consider from 14 and let people see what it looks like. Would anybody like to be heard on the consider? I'm looking around the room virtually. I'm not seeing any objections. All right, we will go with the should. Thank you, Lee. Josh.
Nope, I had the same, I mean, now it's moot, so same point.
Okay, great. Anybody else like to be heard on any of the others? Okay, all right, let's go up and go to the preamble here. Let's scroll up. I'm gonna say my view, again, I could be wrong. I don't think we have radically changed the recommendations such that the preamble no longer fits. But if anybody disagrees, now would be a good time for us to make sure that our preamble matches our recommendations. And the way that I've done this before, and I think for this one it makes sense because our preamble isn't very long, is let's just go through it paragraph by paragraph. Let's take a couple of minutes, a couple of 30 seconds, read paragraph 1, stop, discuss, and we'll just go through. I know there's probably about 8 of these. So let's, everyone take 30 seconds, read paragraph 1. All right, so we have John Cooney would like to be heard, and then Robert has a technical comment. So John, the floor is yours.
Aaron, I was typing in something else, but the machine sent it too early.
Okay.
I have a comment when it comes to lines 18 and 19, but not yet.
Oh, perfect. All right, sounds good. Robert, what is your technical comment?
Oh, just that on footnote 1, line 1, the agency listed should be United States Citizenship and Immigration Services.
I assume that is correct. I do not know the answer, but I assume that is correct. You've never led me astray before, Robert, so I'm going to trust you on this one.
I assume you're not talking about Customs and Border Protection, but rather Citizenship and Immigration Services.
All right, Josh is nodding his head that is a good correction. All right, thank you. Would anybody like to be heard? Oh, Anne has a technical comment. Anne.
I would remove the parentheses before which and after guidance and put a comma. So in other technologies, comma, which together constitute automated legal guidance, period.
I like that. Is there anybody concerned about that? That's writing like a human being rather than a lawyer. So good job, Anne. That feels like the introduction to like a complicated contract. So I like that better. Okay, all right. Hearing no other objections on paragraph 1, let's look at paragraph 2. And this is where John will get a chance. We'll call on you, John, for your thoughts. So, and again, this is kind of tricky because it goes across 2 pages, but we'll do our best here. Well, I guess, John, I guess you're in the next paragraph still. Like we haven't got to you yet.
Wait, I'll be very quick about this. It's in line 19 where there's.
Yeah, we'll get to you next. I thought that was going to be in this paragraph, but it's in the next paragraph.
Okay, good.
So for paragraph 2, would anybody like to be heard? Okay, all right, let's go to paragraph 3 and then John, then you will get called on here.
All right.
Let's just give everybody a chance to read it and then you've got the floor. Okay, John.
My technical comment is on line 19, where it says improving customer experience. Customer strikes me as an odd phrase here. In other places we've used member of the public, or more commonly user, but there's something about customer that suggests that you're in a purchase or sale transaction or something in which the user can say no. So I'd take customer out there and replace it with user or something like that.
Josh or Lee, does that cause you any concern?
I think it's a great change. User.
All right, Anne has a technical comment. Let's change it to user now, but if Anne's comments about that, we can go back to it. So Anne, the floor is yours.
Yeah, it's not technical. It's on this. I actually prefer user, but there's been a move to use customer, and Biden issued an executive order about customer experience, which would include someone receiving Social Security disability benefits, for example, and the National Academy of Public Administration is working on this agile government. I should actually disclose I'm part of an expert advisory group for that. And the term customer gets used there. I prefer user, but there is this kind of debate about it going on.
Perhaps we could get the executive order change to use user as well.
Thanks, Warren. All right, would anybody prefer, thank you, Anne, for that. That is helpful. I was not aware of that. I prefer user, speaking as myself, not as chair. Is there anybody who wants to defend customer here? Nina says Congress requires the IRS to create a customer experience officer office. Nina, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I would just say that part of the goal is to import some of the knowledge and research from the private sector dealing with customers to provide better service to the people who interact with federal agencies. And so there really is an emphasis on customer experience. That's actually a term of art, customer experience.
So would you prefer to use customer here rather than user?
I'm agnostic about that. I think it really depends whether you want to go with the current vogue of how Congress and agencies are looking at it, or whether you want to continue to focus on the issue of these are tools that are automated and therefore they are a user that is using those tools. From that last perspective, I would use user.
But if you are agnostic and some of us have a preference, I'm inclined to go with user unless you're not really agnostic.
No, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Anybody else want to be heard on this? Or anything else on this paragraph? Okay, let's go to the next paragraph. Okay, Bill, please take the floor.
A couple of problems with this paragraph. I think it mixes some different ideas. For example, in the first sentence, critics, however, argue that automated legal guidance tools can oversimplify the law, leading members of the public to sometimes rely on them to their detriment and guidance that is imprecise and misleading. And I think you could just stop by saying automated legal guidance tools can oversimplify the law, period, and then eliminate the detriment at this point and go directly to although the same can be said for other explanatory materials such as brochures and fact sheets. Automated legal guidance tools unique concern because they appear to be human. Well, I think what's missing from this paragraph is the whole issue of reliance and to what extent agencies should or should not provide for reliance issues. And not just reliance where it's the detriment, where it's the guidance is imprecise or misleading, it could be that it's just wrong. The guidance was wrong in the first place, and now the agency wants to take it back. And the question is, should they allow reliance on the former guidance? And we have recommendations about that, but nowhere in the preamble do we ever sort of address this idea of to what extent reliance should be valid and respected. And I think we need at least a sentence and probably in this paragraph to that effect, but I don't have that sentence immediately before me.
Would anybody else like to be heard on Bill's comment? So I guess there's two comments. One is proposal to drop off half that sentence, and the second is to add a sentence. And I mean, they do kind of go together, but let's just kind of do it one by one. Is there anybody who wants to defend the language that Bill proposes to delete? I'm fine deleting it. We recognize in the recommendations that this can be a hard issue. And I don't know if we need it here. So I'm inclined, I think I agree with Bill. I don't know what we're gonna do with the next sentence that Bill has in mind, but I don't have a problem with deleting that. But I guess I'll throw it either Josh or Lee. Would you like to be heard on that?
Sure. The one thing that I would suggest thinking about is it's not just a problem of oversimplification. It could be that the agency, as was just said, might say something that's inaccurate or wrong. And so if you delete that clause, possible change could be to include more language in the existing sentence. So for example, critics argue, however, that automated legal guidance tools can oversimplify or mischaracterize
Or misstate or something, yeah.
Or misstate the law, something like that. That I think would just, it would pick up the language that we're now deleting, being imprecise and misleading is gone. So at least misstate or a word like mischaracterize would deal with that.
Bill, do you have a concern with that?
No, I don't. I think that's a positive step. And again, at least at this point, I think that's good.
Okay, Lee.
Yeah, hi. I think at the end of that first sentence, we should maybe add something else. So it should say oversimplify or misstate the law or offer users law that does not apply well to their factual circumstances. So that's different than sort of an oversimplified statement of the law.
I agree with that. I think that's helpful. I would say offer users guidance. Bill, does that still work for you? All right, thank you. Okay, now Bill, I'm going to go back on you, and you've had some time to think what this new sentence might look like. What do you got?
At the end of the paragraph, there remains an issue to what extent users should be able to rely on automated legal guidance. Just the automated legal guidance.
Okay, no tools.
Yeah, just leave it at that. I mean, that's what it is. There's an issue. In our recommendation, we say agencies should consider what to do about it. So I think that's enough to flag the issue in the preamble.
Is this a helpful edit, Bill, if we said there also is an issue?
Mine?
Okay, as we folks look at the sentence, does anybody want to be heard on this sentence? Lee would like to be heard on the sentence. Lee.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the sentence. I think it's a good sentence, but I don't know if we want to state a little bit more forthrightly. I think that this is true across agencies. Josh can correct me, or anyone can correct me if they think I'm wrong, but the sentence could state agencies take the position that users cannot rely upon automated legal guidance, and that it cannot bind agencies. However, automated legal guidance does not always contain a disclaimer notifying users of this position. Obviously, that states it much more strongly. I don't know if we want to just leave it sort of more flagging the issue, or if we want to more clearly sort of underscore where we're at now.
I would, if you said agencies generally take the position.
All right, Josh would like to be heard.
Yeah, I was just going to echo Lee's suggestion. I think that in the preamble, especially, that is a really nice sentence because it flags for the reader that this is what the agencies are doing, and maybe they shouldn't be doing that, or at least it's a question. And one just small suggestion, maybe in the previous sentence, just a language suggestion. A possibility could be there also is an issue regarding the extent to which users are able to rely upon automated legal guidance. I don't know if that reads a little bit better grammatically, but it's a small point.
So I put myself in the queue as a member. I think that's really helpful. I like these sentences. I think that they do a good job setting it up, but without, I think they appropriately preview what's coming. So I like them. Now, putting back my other hat on, does anybody not like them? All right, hearing no comments, I think we will go with it. All right, thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Bill. All right, let's go to the next paragraph. All right, this is the last paragraph. Who would like to be heard on this one? Robert has a comment on line 37. Robert.
Yeah, my comment is on agencies may wish to supplement those tools by, for example, hiring and training customer service representatives. I think stated that way, it seems rather obvious, and I think it misses a nuance that was in the consultant's report that there's private sector examples of how organizations can build in human customer service specifically to backstop the automated tools so that the user doesn't have to leave the system to find out who to call, which if not done can exacerbate informational asymmetries between different categories of users. So after the for example comma, I'd like to strike the rest of the sentence and say, making live customer service representatives available to address questions that the automated tool could not address. And if that's too strong, as an alternative, I suppose we could do a footnote, just paraphrasing what the consultants found from private sector businesses, and I could provide some alternative text if that would be preferable.
Well, let's do this version first before we start negotiating against ourselves. I guess I'll ask Lee or Josh if this causes them any heartburn. We already have a pretty significant hedge there, which is, these are practices agencies to consider. So we already have that. And then in this sentence, we say, when it's used, agencies may wish to supplement those tools. We already have a hedge, so I don't think we need to worry about being too strong. But maybe I'm wrong. Josh, Lee, what do we think?
I like it, and it's just an example. It's not the only one. It's one possibility, and I think that just as Robert said, it's consistent with what we said in the report. So from my perspective, it looks good to me.
I see that Eloise has a comment / question. Eloise, nice to have you join us.
Hi, everybody, and sorry for coming late from teaching. I just got here about 10 or 15 minutes ago. So I missed the beginning part of our conversation, which is why this is framed as a question in the alternative, because didn't we used to at least have a recommendation that said that agencies should not see these tools as a replacement? And so I'm wondering how this preamble language, which seems much softer than a recommendation, and I very much like the strength of what at least was a recommendation, how those things fit together, but maybe we already covered this when I was not here. I just can't see what's currently on the screen below this.
All right, let's scroll down. By the way, the language that you and Nina put together was received with open arms and everybody loved it. So thank you for that. Let's make sure that we're right there. I guess I'm not seeing this particular.
Oh, at least some of it was in 10, but there might have been more. Like we used to have a recommendation that said should not, and this came from the report again, should not see automated legal guidance tools as like replacements for, but number 10 had something about it. Yeah, there, but then I also just saw, so that's exactly right. But then as you were scrolling down, I saw number 10 having something about contact information. So anyway, that's just, it's like a comment and a question. I like the strength of telling agencies that they should not see these as replacements. And I like the strength of the should in recommendation 10. And I wonder, although I like the thrust, Robert, of what you just put on the screen, I wonder if just like the whole sentence in which it's embedded is softer than the recommendation. And so it feels like a little bit of a mismatch to me.
Lee.
Yeah, sorry that I didn't focus on this before, but I feel like since we're sort of talking about the recommendation and the preamble together, I'll just note that recommendation number 10, it feels a little weird to me, the provide contact information for a human service representative. That doesn't seem like what we're trying to get at, right? Like I think that wouldn't be very good at all if you're in the system and then it's like, if you want to contact an IRS agent, call this number. It seems like we're talking about this backstop theory. So anyway, I just think as we're thinking about what we want to put in the preamble here, we might want to revisit that provide contact information in number 10 here.
Let's fix 10 and then we'll go back to the preamble because the preamble is the support for the recommendation, not the other way around. So let's make sure we're okay with 10 and then we can do the preamble. How would you lead to what would not cause you heartburn?
Something along the lines, agencies should design automate legal guidance to put, I guess we're using the word users in contact with a human service, customer service representative. I think that would fix it as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Eloise, does that work for you?
Yeah, I like that. And I think it then captures what we have in the preamble, but the preamble is just softer.
Correct. Now let's go back and fix the preamble, but I want to make sure we have that before we go that. Let's go back to the preamble, please. That last paragraph there.
Should I put a comment in the chat or?
No, Eloise, the floor is yours.
I a little bit then wonder why we want this sentence at all, because we're just making the recommendation.
Yeah.
So why do we need the sentence in the preamble? I mean, but I don't know if then the language that's in red here maybe should go into part of 10. Like we should just sort of look at the language that Lee just put on the screen and look at the language that Robert gave us that's in red in line 41 and 42 and see if like, is there anything that we want to take from one or the other in recommendation 10? But I don't see the point of the recommendation, the soft language in the preamble?
Yeah, let's do this in steps. So first, now that we have 10, which we can still change the language of 10, but as a recommendation, do we need this sentence in the preamble or should we delete the sentence? I think that's a good question. And I'm gonna ask Robert, because Robert, you helped us with the sentence. What do you think?
No, I don't think it's needed in the preamble.
Nina, the floor is yours, Nina.
I actually feel somewhat strongly that we need this in the preamble. I think that because agencies are really looking at saving money and replacing human beings with automated responses and assistance, that we need to flag in the preamble that you don't get a free pass on getting rid of your customer, your employees that can provide more specific information. And that's the hook for many of the following recommendations. So whether it's this language or not, I would actually say it's not a for example, it's actually a statement that agencies, I don't really know that even when automated legal guidance tools are used, agencies will still need to provide person-to-person support for questions the automated legal guidance tool could not address. And then you get to the recommendation. It's not a should, it's just you will need to provide this. That's just the state of play.
Well, I'm gonna call you in a second, Bill. Let's just see what this looks like and then. Okay, all right, Bill.
Second, Nina's position. I mean, I also fear the idea that agencies would just like to get rid of anybody who's going to talk on the phone to somebody or directly contact somebody by making automated legal guidance the only source of information to the public. And I agree we should not support that idea and should flag the opposite, which is you ought to have people to be able to respond. So whether it's this language or the, for example, I'm a little bit, I don't care too much between that, but the idea of flagging this idea is, I think, important.
Eloise.
I appreciate this framing of the importance of the sentence. So what about something like, I'm just trying to think about it in a way that's stronger than the softer version, but also doesn't duplicate the recommendation. So what about something like, the conference also recognizes that even when automated legal guidance tools are used, additional mechanisms such as person-to-person support, remain important. I'm not really sure that person-to-person support is, I don't know about the difference between that and customer service representatives. I feel a little ambivalent about the difference between that. But what about like remain important is the governing thrust of the recommendation I'm trying to offer here.
Nina, does that work?
I think will be necessary. I mean, I don't think we should hedge. It's an observation. It's not a recommendation. I mean, people's experiences show that. You can just see it from the usage of phone calls after they, again, we did a study in the Taxpayer Advocate Service that showed that people went online first to the IRS and did not get their answer and then went to the phone. That's the empirical data on that.
Robert.
This is actually interesting because I'm now recalling something in the consultant's report. I forget which agency it was, but they found that the online tools actually increased the number of calls that were made to the live support people. So we could even say, even when automated legal guidance tools are used, agencies should expect that additional mechanisms such as person-to-person support will be necessary, or that agencies should expect that they will need to provide person-to-person support. Because empirically, if they think that they can just rely on the the automated mechanisms, they may find that actually they're creating a market for advice, and they're going to need more live people.
I think agencies should expect that they will need to provide additional mechanisms, including person-to-person support. Okay, Nina, how does that work for you? What is that line? Does that work for you? Nina says I can go with
Yeah,
it.
I'm good with that.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Eloise, are you good with that?
Works for me.
And Robert, you're good with it?
Yes.
Okay, anybody not? Small comment, Lee.
Maybe just say additional guidance mechanisms.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Okay, Josh.
This is a really small comment, and now I'm thinking too much like a tax lawyer where corporation could technically be a person. Do you maybe want to think about including, we'll need to provide live person-to-person support? Just to make it clear, we're talking about a human being. Yeah, so should expect that they will need to provide additional guidance mechanisms, including live person-to-person support. That would be one suggestion I have.
Perfect. And can we get rid of that extra version of that there? All right. Okay. Eloise.
This is an ACUS style question, but why do we need to have two sentences back to back that say the conference, blah, blah? Can we not, like in line 39, could we just delete the introductory material of the conference also recognizes that? Or do we need that for some reason? Is there some style under which sometimes the conference recognizes something explicitly and sometimes we just assert something?
I'm going to ask Reeve or Matt, what do we think?
Completely arbitrary, to be candid. So whatever the committee prefers, that's what my answer would be.
I agree.
If there's no ACUS style, then my preference would be to cut it, and I might just replace it with some transitional phrase like moreover, comma, even when, or something like that.
My rule is when it comes to style, I always do what Eloise says. So I'm going to, you have 2 votes, at least, Eloise, on that one. All right, now let's go back and look at 10 to make sure that we're good on 10, and then we will have a vote. All right, make sure 10 is now consistent with what we just said. All right, number 10. Would anybody like to be heard on number 10? Okay, hearing none, I think we have come to the end. I think it is time for our vote. I'm trying to remember what the magic words are for the vote here. Is it just all in favor, aye? Is that good enough? Let's do it, all right.
A voice vote would be fine.
What was that, Matt?
A voice vote would be fine.
Sure. All right, we're gonna do a voice vote here. All in favor of approving the recommendations, please say aye.
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 I
All opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it, and we are finished. Thank you, everybody. This is a lot of good work for folks. Thank you so much for our consultants. Thank you for the team. Matt, do you have any concluding thoughts for us?
So just to thank everybody, and especially you and our consultants, Aaron. As usual, you were both efficient and careful at the same time. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Remind us again, when is the plenary?
It is June 16th.
Okay, June 16th. Well,
That's a Thursday.
That is a Thursday. All right. Well, I hope to see everybody either virtually or in person on June 16th. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks.